I'm Lynn Packer with my O.U.R. Video Op-Ed Part 17, Batman Unmasked, Tim Ballard's first O.U.R. wingman. Batman is the code name for an undercover operative who in 2014 organized the first child sex slave rescues for Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad in Latin America. He's described by another operative as the bravest man I've ever known and the tip of the O.U.R. spear. Batman was far deeper undercover than Ballard ever was. It was more like Ballard was Batman's Robin. Batman is portrayed by a Hollywood actor in the yet-to-be-released The Sound of Freedom. Batman appears briefly in one segment of the trailer, which has been released. A Sound of Freedom promotion says, the movie begins by introducing its hero, Tim Ballard, and his team, including a pixelated source known only as Batman. Right away, the audience understands the situations we are about to see are so dangerous, identities must be concealed.
We're talking about extracting an 11-year-old girl from an army of rebels.
Not just her. I'm talking about rescuing hundreds of kids.
She could be a block down the road, or she could be in Moscow, Bangkok, LA.
Here's how O.U.R. describes Batman. His name is a closely guarded secret. He differs from the more famous Cape Crusader in one important way. He's real. He's a flawed hero with a troubled past. Batman spent 15 years laundering money for drug cartels in Latin America. By his own admission, he was out of control, living in a crack hotel. But he came to Jesus, dedicating his life to fighting trafficking and protecting the vulnerable from unimaginable horrors. Batman works largely in the dark of night, going into places and doing things that the government cannot, infiltrating himself with traffickers. Batman is a Californian who's been living in Guatemala. He founded and runs the faith-based nonprofit Breaking Chains. BC is like a tiny O.U.R. He says he's a Christian evangelical guided by the Holy Spirit to bring the light of Christ to the dark world of sexual exploitation. Batman appeared, face blurred, an actual name withheld, in Ballard's first feature-length docudrama, The Abolitionists. Batman was interviewed in the 2016 film while sitting in the back of a van somewhere in Latin America.
I spent the better part of 15 years laundering money for drug cartels all over Latin America. When my life changed, I had been at a high point, using a lot of laundered money. I was the funder of two hotels, totaling over $50 million. I was living on 9 different passports. I had 9 different passports, Canadian passports. When I'd go down to these countries to pick up the money, I was just out of control. I was drinking, I was using drugs, doing all the things that I'm so against now.
Batman's nonprofit features a broken chain as part of its logo, and years later, Ballard also created a broken chain-themed symbol. To clarify the difference between government and civilian undercover agents, government law enforcement officers can go undercover. Ballard, as an example, claims to have worked undercover most of the time he was a government agent. But they can also recruit and direct the activities of civilian undercover agents. Batman worked as a civilian UC under the direction of foreign attorneys general in several Latin American countries. Quite often, those overseas government operations would include participation of U.S. State Department and Department of Homeland Security agents. After working undercover with several U.S. agencies, Batman met and worked with Tim Ballard when Ballard was with Homeland Security investigations. There's been quite a bit of Batman bewilderment as to who he actually is. One interviewer, Jimmy Rex, referred to Tim Ballard as the real-life Batman. Perhaps Rex, who had participated in O.U.R. strikes, was trying to imbue Ballard with some of the real Batman's persona. But Ballard is not Batman. Paul Hutchinson was an operative on many early O.U.R. rescues, playing the role of a millionaire pedophile. One of his interviewers headlined an article, "Is Paul Hutchinson actually Batman?" Then a Q&A ensued. Question: So you're a successful businessman with an intense sense of responsibility, and you train in martial arts. Paul, are you Batman? Paul was unable to comment. Then the questioner said, "No worries, Paul. I think that answers that one for all of us," implying that Hutchinson is Batman. But Hutchinson is not Batman. Now, for the first time, O.U.R.'s actual Batman publicly reveals his identity, including his face and his name, Stephen T. Cass. He's seen here with 2 Latin American government agents. He's an undercover agent who first learned his code name was Batman from Tim Ballard, when Ballard was still a government agent. So how did the Batman code name come about? Batman wrote, "For some years, starting back in about 2007, the United States government would call on me to do things that they could not. They codenamed me Batman. I only found out about it in 2012 when Tim mistakenly sent me the email he meant to send to a guy named Stephen, who I don't know." In the series of emails I exchanged with Cass, he described himself not as Batman, but as the Lone Ranger, who preferred working alone. He wrote, "I was the Lone Ranger. Most O.U.R. teams work in teams. I prefer to work alone. I did their first 5 ops literally alone. Tim and the donors arrived 48 hours before the day of, but I did all the operation work to set things up myself. Batman's pre-op work involved gathering intelligence, finding and contacting traffickers who pimped out child sex workers, and setting up a meeting where Ballard's team could role-play as sex tourists, that is, as decoys to finalize a sting operation. Batman is aware of the criminal probe into O.U.R. He wrote, "Tim is a friend, but he is also to blame for his own situation. I knew it would happen. Fame and money destroyed what was a really good man. I believe when O.U.R. started, he was pure-hearted. It did not last long, but the Tim of 10 years ago is not the Tim you guys are digging into. You guys referring to me and to Las Vegas reporter Damian Moore, who also received Batman's emails." Despite playing a huge role during O.U.R.'s early years, Batman says he's not been interviewed by either Davis County investigators or the FBI. Batman claims to still have a treasure trove of records dealing with Ballard and O.U.R. He says, "I have hundreds of emails on each op, including with Tim, HIS, DC, HIS in countries, and all the comms with perps. I asked for copies, and he declined." In our email exchange, Batman described the first takedowns. The rest of the guys would fly in for the show Sting Day. I packaged intel to a prosecutable level before the day it happens, so the op is already over when they arrived. Truth is, the way I work, by the time they arrive, the op is over. I did all the operation work to set things up myself. I asked via email, "What about Ballard bringing in donors and cameramen for the stings?" He said, "I never agreed with bringing in civilians or Hollywood peeps. That is documented the day after Carta 2. The first op attempt failed when the Columbia AG shut it down minutes before go time. My email to Tim blasting him for putting unneeded, untrained lives at risk. Batman's emails are peppered with acronyms and abbreviations. I'll try to decipher some of those as I go. When Batman says Carta, he's referring to Cartagena, Colombia, South America. Cartagena is located on the coast. One news outlet describes it like this: the coastal town of Cartagena is the tourist capital of Colombia. Cartagena has been a hotspot for sex tourists who target children. Child prostitution is a serious problem in the city. As 26% of Cartagena's inhabitants live in poverty, many families have no other way out of deprivation than to sell their young daughters and sons to prostitution rings. This gets a little bit complicated. There were 2 initial stings in Cartagena in 2014. The first one, called Operation Genesis, failed. At the last minute, the Colombian AG would not issue arrest warrants. O.U.R had to pull the plug right as underage sex workers were being transported to a party. O.U.R tells that story in its movie, The Abolitionists. The second Cartagena takedown, called Operation Triple Take, was successful, especially because it involved operations in 3 different Colombian cities the same day, plus the additional arrest of a serial sex tourist in Miami. That's what O.U.R's still not released to the public docudrama Operation Triple Take is about. In the movie The Abolitionists, there's a scene where Ballard and Batman are discussing the impending sting operation to take place at a sex party they had arranged. This next one shows Batman talking to a trafficker, a pimp, who is delivering child sex workers to the party. And finally, here's a distraught Ballard after Colombian authorities withdrew authorization for the bust at the last moment. Next, I'll play a short clip of Ballard and Batman discussing a down payment and then praying just when they thought a takedown would occur.
Homeboy Marco shows up because he wanted 20,000 to go run over there. He wanted to talk to the girls right now to make sure tonight they're going to be there. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. I gave him 50,000. I'm like, now how old are these girls? He's like, 13, 15.
Before these things, we always pray. So we're going to say prayer and they're going to offer.
Sure. Father, we just come to you now, Lord. We just thank you that you're a God filled with love, you're a God filled with mercy and grace. And we live for this.
In an interview sometime after the Operation Genesis fiasco, Ballard described the setback. We get a call. You see it in the movie. I'm falling apart. I get dizzy. I'm yelling at the Colombian agent. They never give me a reason, never told us what they had done.
What? What about these little kids? They just called it off.
This is why I operate Black River Talk. This is exactly why I do it.
2 years after O.U.R's first Colombia failure, Ballard was interviewed by one of his strike team members. They talked about Batman and the going black option they still had after the government said no go. Ballard is asked, let's say Colombia says, no, you can't go get the girls. You go anyway and make the bust. Ballard said, we got a lot of people who told us we should have done that. What would have happened? Well, you don't know what would have happened. There's been cases where people successfully pulled it off. Like one of our informants, Batman, says in that moment, this is why I operate black, because he used to do that in Mexico. He would go in and buy the girls without working for the police, take them, throw them in a van, kidnap them from the kidnappers, and take them to a shelter. Question, doesn't that just create a vacuum, though? If you can't take out the bad guys, you're just putting 5 more girls at risk. Ballard said totally, because all that does is that trafficker's going to go pick up another girl. O.U.R. regrouped and a few months later returned to Cartagena for a second, and this time successful operation. In an attempt to minimize confusion, Triple Take is both the name of an operation conducted October 11, 2014, and the name of a movie not yet released. Even though the Triple Take docudrama has yet to be released, it has been premiered multiple times at fundraisers, including one this month in New York. That screening was set for Long Island. The movie screening promo says, "It was and still is the biggest operation O.U.R. has ever conducted, and led to the rescue of 123 victims and the arrest of 12 traffickers."
This operation is going to rock Colombia, and once that shakes, we're going to scare any other trafficker. We've got to tie them all up.
The Triple Take jump was O.U.R.'s first and biggest takedown. O.U.R. claimed it conducted the operation in cooperation with Colombia law enforcement. It said the crowning achievement of Operation Underground Railroad occurred on October 11, 2014, when, in cooperation with the Colombian government, they executed the largest known human trafficking bust to date. But whose raid was it really? O.U.R. says it ran the raid. The sting was spearheaded by former CIA agent and ex-Homeland Security investigator Tim Ballard, who organized an elaborate fake bachelor party and requested underage prostitutes sent to a vacation house full of hidden cameras. Was O.U.R. the tip of the mission's spear, or merely a bit player? One of the U.S. government agencies that participated in the operation, ICE, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, a component of the Department of Homeland Security, issued a press release. The headline read, "ICE, Colombian authorities rescue 55 sex trafficking victims, all minors." The press release went on to say, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Homeland Security investigations, and the Colombian Attorney General conducted the operation that was carried out simultaneously in Cartagena, Medellin, and Armenia, all Colombian cities. Near the bottom of the press release, it said, "Breaking Chains," that's Batman's charity, and Underground Railroad, didn't even have O.U.R.'s name right, both U.S. nonprofit organizations dedicated to eradicating the sexual exploitation of children, assisted with this case. The Colombian Navy and Coast Guard also participated. ABC Nightline reporter David Wright, who covered Operation Triple Take, asked Ballard whether non-government jump teams should even be involved with going after child sex offenders.
The attaché for Homeland Security Investigations tells us Operation Underground Railroad is not officially sanctioned by the U.S. government, but the U.S. is aware of it.
I can imagine a lot of our viewers looking at this and saying, geez, what a noble thing, but still being kind of skeptical.
Yeah.
Like there's something that doesn't sit right. Like it feels like this should be the work of governments.
It absolutely should be. And if the governments were doing it, we wouldn't try this. No one's doing anything, and no one will do anything.
Long before O.U.R. existed, ICE was combating child sex exploitation worldwide. It wrote, since the launch of Operation Predator in 2003, HSI has arrested more than 12,000 individuals for crimes against children, including the production and distribution of online child pornography, traveling overseas for sex with minors, and sex trafficking of children. In fiscal year 2014, more than 2,300 individuals were arrested by HSI special agents under this initiative, and more than 1,000 victims identified or rescued. HSI is a founding member and current chair of the Virtual Global Task Force, an international alliance of law enforcement agencies and private industry sector partners working together to prevent and deter online child sexual abuse. That part of Ballard's pitch, I have to do it because the governments are not doing it, is disproven even by their first and still to date largest operation where U.S. and Colombian governments played the biggest roles. More than 6 years ago, I reported on Operation Triple Take and wrote that O.U.R. has to downplay any ICE involvement because Ballard quit ICE so his hands would no longer be tied by restrictive government rules and regulations on overseas missions. I asked O.U.R.'s chief operating officer why his charity's press statements indicate his organization let out, but the U.S. government statement to the news media portrays it as a joint U.S. and Colombian Attorney General operation with O.U.R. and another charity playing supporting roles. Tim will tell you this: we're fine with anyone taking credit, Jerry Gowan said. Here's what Batman had to say about the second Cartagena op. The Carta op in 2014 started from me infiltrating sex tourists' Facebook pages. There I connected with Dennis DeJesus and have 200 pages of messages back and forth. I was working under the supervision of ICE and USAO. That's an abbreviation of the United States Attorney's Office. That was all me alone, but that is what opened the door for Triple Take with a U.S. nexus. Dennis DeJesus was a North Lauderdale, Florida man accused of repeatedly traveling to South America to have sex with underage girls. He was charged with sex tourism and production of child pornography. Testifying before a congressional subcommittee, Ballard said, "What is most interesting about this case in Colombia is that Homeland Security agents ended up arresting an American citizen named Dennis DeJesus." Ballard told the subcommittee that my team initiated the DeJesus investigation without mentioning it was not any O.U.R. operative team member, but Batman. Nabbing DeJesus was considered a major bust. Who deserves the most credit? Matt Osborne, O.U.R.'s Director of International Operations, credits his nonprofit, O.U.R., and the Colombian and American governments for detecting and prosecuting DeJesus, while not crediting Batman and his nonprofit, Broken Chains, which played the biggest role of all. He had said, as a result of the strong case HSI, CTI, and O.U.R. put together, DeJesus had no other choice but to plead guilty and is currently serving 15 years in prison. The press credited Batman for exposing DeJesus, referring to him as Todd, the code name he was given for the operation. The South Florida Sun-Sentinel reported that during the investigation, DeJesus became Facebook friends with an undercover confidential informant identified as Todd in court records. The two discussed traveling to Colombia for sex with child prostitutes in private messages they exchanged on the social network. DeJesus was caught in a major international undercover investigation in Colombia and the United States that resulted in the arrests of 11 Colombians on child sex trafficking charges. Batman was a key player to the arrest of another American involved with child sex trafficking in Latin America. It was a high-profile case, and again, O.U.R. wanted some of the glory. The perpetrator was Joshua David Brown, nicknamed by the local media, the Beast. Brown was arrested in 2015 in Peru and convicted in 2019. He recruited Peruvian minors as prostitutes for sex tourists. He created and distributed child pornography. He was nicknamed the Beast by Peruvian news outlets. Batman told me that Breaking Chains did Peru and David Joshua Brown, a.k.a. the Beast. He said O.U.R. had no part in that op. He said, I was brought in by HSI Bogota, who had recently been given charge over setting up Peru. What he's saying is that an American agent in Bogota, Colombia, helped arrange the Peruvian bust. They sent a special agent in for the process of me signing up legally under the Peru Attorney General. O.U.R. was one of 5 organizations who helped fund the op. O.U.R.'s version of the Joshua Brown takedown shows an arrest photo with O.U.R.'s name and logo attached, along with the claim that Brown was captured in O.U.R.'s Operation Clear Hope in December 2015 for leading an organization of online child sexual exploitation. This is a prime example of why we fight child sex trafficking overseas. Here is more of the same, stealing most of Batman's thunder. O.U.R. wrote, December 2015, American pedophile Joshua David Brown was arrested in Peru. O.U.R. had a team on the ground to help support the local law enforcement and one of our outstanding partner ministries in Latin America in the operation, without specifically naming Batman or Broken Chains. Where is O.U.R.'s video proof? O.U.R. always had multiple videographers deployed. O.U.R. ties the Joshua Brown arrest to fundraising. With your donations, O.U.R. was able to help fund part of the initial operation and have a team on the ground to support one of our outstanding partner ministries in Latin America. If Batman is accurate, O.U.R.'s team did nothing during the arrest. Next, I'll take a look at O.U.R.'s claim to have eradicated child sex trafficking in northern Colombia. This is what O.U.R. says happened after Operation Triple Take. It was part of an idea that Ballard had. Would hitting the same region over and over again create enough of a deterrent for child traffickers? Would it be enough to completely halt the business in its dirty tracks? Yes. When the O.U.R. team went back undercover for the 5th or 6th time after Operation Triple Take, no one would sell kids to them. They referenced all of these hits that were going on, Ballard said. The traffickers said, it's too dangerous to be in the child trafficking business in this region at this time. In a July 2020 interview, Ballard said, they stopped. Would-be traffickers had to give up.
And what's your mission moving forward with the movie, with just everything you're up to? Is it to end sex slavery? Is it to rescue a certain amount of kids a year?
It is to end it.
Yeah.
So we did an experiment. And it was very telling in 2014. We put almost all of our resources into the northern region of Colombia. And
one region. And
we just said, pounded.
How do we get rid of it in one? Yeah.
Pounded. Like every month, 2 or 3 operations, and empowered law enforcement. And then to the point where they stopped. And the would-be traffickers said, yeah, I had to give it up. I'm into drugs and I'm doing something. This is crazy. Yeah. And so we did it. We knew it would happen. It's logical. Like, now there's a consequence. There wasn't before. But we did it to show, like, if everybody would focus on child crimes, if we all did it together, we could end it.
In 2018, Matt Osborne was interviewed by LDS Living. He said, 3 months after Operation Triple Take, Ballard returned to the streets of Colombia and began asking local traffickers if they could sell him a child for the night. They told me, don't you know, no one is going to sell you kids now. It's too dangerous. We created a huge deterrent for the traffickers and scared off the sex tourism travelers, he explains. We rocked the whole country. Yet another Ballard interview about shutting down Colombian child sex trafficking. He said, we can shut it down, and the same traffickers, we track them. The ones we didn't catch, they stopped selling kids. Now they got into other things, but at least they're not selling 10-year-old girls anymore. And the travelers, the American travelers, didn't travel there anymore. So that became our model. We did that in 2014. We need to do this everywhere. We're in 26 countries. We need to be in 126 countries. Here are the facts. O.U.R. likely made little or no difference in combating child sex prostitution in Colombia. O.U.R. offers no verifiable proof it has curbed child sex slavery in northern Colombia or anywhere. O.U.R. may not only be distorting the facts, but also failing to disclose material information to donors about their purported success there. O.U.R. may have pounded donor money down a Colombian rat hole. There are many indicators that the child prostitution problem in Cartagena and other Colombian cities is no better, possibly worse than in 2014. Vice News reported on Cartagena's underage prostitution boom right at the time O.U.R. claims it had shut it down. It wrote, "Sex tourism is booming, and along with it, underage prostitution rings are confounding Colombian officials' efforts to stop the trend." The article even refers to the government strike the previous year. Underage prostitution is increasing, local experts say, as highlighted by a high-profile sex trafficking bust last October involving a local beauty queen. Vice News visited Cartagena recently to examine why so many youths are being drawn into sex work and found a highly organized scheme serving lusty foreigners while pumping profits to tourism agencies and taxi drivers. Finding sex for pay is easy here. Consider this 2015 thesis on Colombian human trafficking. The case study concludes sex tourism is still a major problem in Colombia, and the government knows it. In October 2014, the Miami Herald reported that Colombian and U.S. authorities, working with two nonprofit groups, staged 3 simultaneous raids in the cities of Cartagena, Medellin, and Armenia. Luis Gonzalez with Colombia's Attorney General's office admitted that child sex trafficking is a problem that worries us greatly because it's growing exponentially. The Miami Herald reported not only is the government seeing an increase in the number of travelers searching for underage sex, but it has also detected larger, more sophisticated operations. The Guardian reported on the problem. It wrote, "The sex party industry is thriving in Cartagena, say insiders." On the internet, several companies offer sex tours of the city, including a 3-day trip for $6,000 that promises unlimited sex with up to 60 women on one of Cartagena's private islands. Last week, police arrested 6 Israelis in coordinated raids around the country. Prosecutors say those arrested recruited underage girls for sex parties with visiting Israeli tourists. Deutsche Welle, a German news outlet, reported, "In Colombia, many in the popular tourist city of Cartagena are concerned about the growing number of children being forced into prostitution. The problem has been deepening as Cartagena's sunny beaches attract more and more international tourists."
During the day, Cartagena stuns with its vivid colors and vibrant Caribbean charm. A picture-perfect holiday destination for tourists from all over the world. But when the sun goes down, things change. As night falls, sex workers flood the squares popular with foreigners. Many of them far too young to be doing this, as a DW undercover reporter finds out after just a couple of minutes on the central Plaza de los Coches.
How old are you?
16.
How much is it?
500. I know a place within walking distance. It's safe. I always go there.
Our undercover reporter was offered sex with a minor just meters away from 2 patrolling policemen.
Earlier this year, author-reporter Chuck Holton visited Cartagena.
Hey folks, Chuck Holton here. I'm in Cartagena, Colombia. This is my first time in Cartagena, and I tell you, it's beautiful. I mean, look at the sunset back there behind me. There we go. Look at that. And I just wanted to kind of tell you a little bit about what I found yesterday as I came down here last night. And let me tell you, I had no idea how bad it actually was. Not only are there prostitutes just everywhere down there, And some of them, I met 3 prostitutes who were under 14 years old last night. That's just heartbreaking to me. Just so sad.
Tim Ballard was asked if Colombian law enforcement agencies are corrupt. He responded, "And we hear from other people too. Oh, you can't work in Colombia because they're all corrupt. They're all corrupt there. CTI has been known for corruption. There has been corruption in those agencies, so you shouldn't work with them." Then he says, wait, what? Name me an agency where there hasn't been corruption. FBI, CIA, Homeland Security, you name it. Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes gave Outstanding Success Awards to Colombian investigators who worked with O.U.R. without providing any proof of that success. Why do Ballard's claims matter? Claims that O.U.R. stopped Cartagena child sex prostitution, had a team participate at the Joshua David Brown arrest, played a role in ferreting out child sex tourist Dennis DeJesus, among other unproven claims Ballard has made that I mentioned in previous reports. Giving donors misleading information and or making material omissions could violate Utah's communications fraud statute. The law says any person who has devised any scheme to defraud another or to obtain from another money by means of false or fraudulent representations or material omissions is guilty of a felony. Now, the next section of my report will deal with how Batman operated when he acted for O.U.R. First, the blown cover danger. How Batman worked undercover. One of Batman's methods to infiltrate organizations that could be prostituting girls was buying cocaine. Then, if necessary, snort it to convince bad guys he was one of them. Again, communicating by email, I asked about using alcohol and drugs. He responded, "Drunk? No. Drinking? Yes. To play the part of a sex tourist, we must act like they do, which includes strip clubs, brothels, and so on." He said the same things any law enforcement undercover agents do. Drugs? Only me personally. Always bought cocaine. It opened doors operationally to find the scum-level child traffickers. Only used when forced, as that was one of the ways the perps would vet me to see if I was a cop. Bought almost daily. Batman said he did not use cocaine recreationally, that is, when not undercover, and that he was not aware of any O.U.R. operatives buying or using cocaine in order to keep cover. Batman wrote that many times the traffickers would send them girls for sex before the actual operation in order to test the undercover agents. The girls were supposed to report back if we did in fact have sex with them or not. So what I would do is have a plate with cocaine on it in the living room tables of condos we rented. I would tell them I was embarrassed for not being able to perform, inferring that cocaine caused ED, and pay them double the price with the caveat they not tell the perps I was unable to perform. It was a good excuse and worked every time except for one that almost blew the op. She did tell the perp I did not do anything. I asked Batman if he or O.U.R. operatives bribe local law enforcement officers to get special treatment. His response, an emphatic no. He and O.U.R. did not bribe local police. Batman called payments to police funding. They would fund police who participated in takedowns. He said, funding, yes. We and O.U.R. always support with funding the agents in country put on our teams. They only make $200 to $400 a month. And I think he's talking about pesos there. So to cover their on-the-street costs, we always help them. I have never bribed any law enforcement, nor was ever in a situation where I was asked to. I tried to get Batman to explain the difference between bribing and funding without success. Batman told me the bad guy is not Tim Ballard, but Cliff Graham. He said, my goal is not to be party to slamming O.U.R. Have they made a lot of mistakes? The same could be said of any NGO. If you want to explore someone, I suggest Cliff Graham. He was Utah-based and has a lot of prosecutable offenses. If you want to expose scams in the Lord's name, Cliff Graham is your guy. Cliff Graham is a Christian biblical fiction author. Glenn Beck promoted one of several Cliff Graham books in May 2014, Day of War.
About this. This is Day of War. This is from Cliff Graham, and this is my absolute favorite reading material. Yes, I absolutely love it.
I'm about here with my son. It is fantastic. Just fantastic.
This is getting people interested in the Bible again.
Cliff Graham appeared with Tim Ballard on one of Glenn Beck's shows to discuss O.U.R.'s latest rescue mission. Beck's website said, author Cliff Graham, who accompanied Ballard and his team on the mission, also joined the program to share his experience and how he's working to raise money and awareness for O.U.R.
We have an ops team that goes and saves little girls out of underage sex trafficking. All sex trafficking is horrific, but we've been focused on the little girls, little kids. And I once sat across the table from a guy in Colombia. I was posing as a buyer, as a client. And he pulled out his iPhone. He started scrolling through pictures of little girls. And he would say things like, just like he's showing you a car to sell. It's like, okay, she's 9, a virgin, $1,000.
In another interview, Graham described the early formation of O.U.R. and who, between Ballard and Batman, would get the glory. He said, as Ballard formed O.U.R., he reached out to his contacts in Latin America, mainly Batman. If I put a team together to come down and pose as American sex tourists, would you work with us? You will get all the credit for it. You will get all the glory for it. We will sneak in and out like ninjas in the night. That's why they call it the Underground Railroad, because the work that the group does is going to be largely unknown. The facts show the opposite happened. Batman worked in the shadows, and Ballard took the spotlight. Alongside working with O.U.R., Graham engaged in several business ventures. He planned guided Israel Good Battle tours, visiting Old Testament battle sites. Here he's showing where he says David fought Goliath. He promoted an epic motion picture based on one of his books with big-name Hollywood stars. He tried setting up his own strike force, similar to O.U.R., to rescue underage prostitutes. All of the business ventures failed. Batman accuses Graham of scamming clients and investors on the Israel tours, a child rescue jump team, a fake movie, and writing bad checks. He says Graham funded a lavish lifestyle, including an expensive Ogden, Utah home. One example of his financial troubles, Graham was sued by a Weber County investor who bought book rights for $130,000. Graham was prosecuted for fraud by the same county attorney, Troy Rawlings, who's investigating Operation Underground Railroad for suspected fraud. Rawlings applied the same communications fraud statute that could be the basis for some charges, if any, against Tim Ballard. I spoke with Graham on the phone. He did not disagree with Batman's assessment. Graham said his attempt to set up a Christian-based child rescue group was a major mistake. He said he ran his businesses poorly, became over-leveraged, and ended up hurting people financially. He pled guilty to the fraud charge. Next, this report goes into O.U.R.'s suspected false claims it makes about providing aftercare for purported rescued child sex slaves. They are among alleged false claims being investigated by the Davis County Attorney's Office. I will deal with the question, who is telling the truth about aftercare, Tim Ballard or various media accounts. What was O.U.R. saying about aftercare prior to Ballard admitting this year that O.U.R. dropped the aftercare ball? Jessica Mass, O.U.R.'s aftercare director, makes ongoing claims about the attention O.U.R. pays to rescued victims. She says the organization is committed to taking care of survivors and following up with them for the rest of their lives. She follows up, visiting the survivors to be sure they're receiving proper care. O.U.R. invests in the children it rescues, she said, and pays for their education and mental health treatment. Once a person is part of the O.U.R. family, Mass said, there's no such thing as aging out. Your family for life. Ballard's website says, O.U.R. strives to provide personalized care to each survivor we work with. We assist survivors in getting needed medical care such as surgeries, dental work, and therapy, including equine therapy. With regard to fundraising, they also follow survivors' stories after they've been rescued. O.U.R. shares these stories and more through mid-year and annual reports so that donors can see the impact of their dollars. Ballard has called O.U.R.'s aftercare program very robust.
I mean, we are able to attack this problem from every angle. We have a very robust aftercare program.
What do you do with the rescued victims of sex trafficking and human trafficking? What happens to them?
That's the most important part of this whole process. We'll spend months, even in one country, we spent a year vetting out different organizations that we could partner with who have the shelters and the rehabilitation tools necessary.
But all of a sudden, late this year, Ballard backpedaled on aftercare. In a video statement, he said, "People come after us and say, 'You don't do aftercare. You don't do aftercare.'"
At Operation Underground Railroad, aftercare is the most important piece. People come after us and say, "You don't do aftercare. You don't do aftercare." I wasn't trained in aftercare at all. Maybe I should have been, but that was a different time. And when we came in, our understanding of aftercare was the social workers in that state or in that country that we're working in, they cover that part. Well, as a nonprofit, I was getting questions that I never got as an agent, like, well, what exactly are those social workers doing? What exactly does aftercare look like? And I was embarrassed to not have the answer. I wish I had thought of these things. That's on me for not having thought about those things before. But during that first year of 2014, I began trying to get questions answered and trying to educate myself. And what I found was most of the time, it was unsatisfactory what the social workers in particular countries were doing in terms of aftercare. In fact, they were still trying to figure it out too. So we're just trying to figure this out. Let us be a startup for a second, right? But we recognized early that one of our problems was we don't have knowledge really into what is happening on the aftercare side. We're kind of blindly trusting. So at that point in 2014, we started to look into hiring people. And some of the people we hired to come in and create our aftercare program were the wrong people. And we tried everything, like give us a proposal, give us a budget, give us an idea, and it just wasn't working out. And so we went through most of 2014 scrambling, trying to figure out how to build an aftercare program.
When Ballard said some of the people we hired to come in and create the aftercare program were the wrong people, who was he referring to? This O.U.R. press release announced who it was. O.U.R. was founded in 2013, and Ed Smart, Elizabeth's father, came on as the Director for Prevention and Rehabilitation in August of 2014. His role is to help governments in the countries O.U.R. rescues children establish programs to help the freed children recover. He is also working with partner organizations in these countries to provide safe havens for rescued victims. There was a lot of fanfare when O.U.R. hired Smart to handle aftercare and at the same time put his daughter Elizabeth on its board. A few months ago, I reported that Ed Smart accused Ballard of shortchanging the aftercare program. saying the opposite of what Ballard says in his YouTube video. Smart claims Ballard ignored his proposals to beef up aftercare. Looking back, Ed Smart told me he is totally disillusioned with O.U.R. and Tim Ballard. He said, "When I heard Tim make comments that I felt were not true, I became even more disillusioned. I made proposals about aftercare that were not being taken seriously." He said, "It hurts me to see people pour money into O.U.R. when I feel it's very undeserving. One thing I would say about Tim and his organization, they were a money-making machine." So who could be the people besides Ed Smart who Ballard says are coming after O.U.R. because O.U.R. does not do aftercare? Last December, Vice World News reported, reputable and widely known organizations providing aftercare to survivors of trafficking were unfamiliar with O.U.R., and experts raised serious questions about the work O.U.R. claims it does. O.U.R., for its part, says that some of the lack of clarity is by design, to preserve the necessary privacy and dignity of trafficking survivors. Earlier this year, Meg Conley wrote an essay for Slate. It was titled, "Called by God." She wrote, "In 2014, I went on a vigilante raid to save kids sold for sex. What we did haunts me now." She wrote, "After the sting, I asked people on the jump team where the 26 kids were taken. I was given only vague answers. Aftercare wasn't really their focus, I was told, but they partnered with people who did it well. I found out what really happened from a foreign policy report. In 2014, after O.U.R.'s first operation in the Dominican Republic, a local organization called the National Council for Children and Adolescents quickly discovered it didn't have the capacity to handle the 26 girls rescued. They were released in less than a week. Some testified, her article reported. The local organization lost track of the others." Grit Daily reports experts in the field warn that organizations touting having rescued victims of human trafficking without having extensive reports on the quality of aftercare could be doing more harm than good. If an organization is contracting out for aftercare, or if it is simply connecting survivors to shelters, this is where the claims of providing aftercare should end, says Dr. Lauren Pinkston, an expert in resources for victims of human trafficking. "I find it unethical to draw donor dollars from skillful marketing when survivors and their nuanced rehabilitative challenges are painted with a broad stroke, especially when services are not able to be delivered with sustainable care," she said. Here's how Ballard can put suspected lies about aftercare to rest. Provide donors, law enforcement, and news reporters a list of the names, ages, and hometown of every underage prostitute it claims to have rescued. Use only the first letters of the last names to protect privacy. Disclose when and where each was taken, how long each was there, and what rehab each was given. Where did each go after being released from aftercare? Divulge where each one is today and what they're doing. Wrapping up this report, after answering more than a dozen questions, Batman flip-flopped. He stopped answering questions. He threatened legal action. He said, "If you lie in your Batman piece, I will not give you the mercy O.U.R., Reyes, and Tim have." He said he had 3 attorneys working on a possible libel suit. He said, "My previous YouTube O.U.R. reports are about innocent people," referring to Sean Reyes and Tim Ballard. Batman claims to have breaking news. "I have friends at DOJ," he wrote. "Lots of them. The investigation, which you state is ongoing and moving forward, was already closed and trashed. There was only one, and it is over. They interviewed 30-plus people, and there was and will be no action. It's dead. which certainly would be comforting news for Tim Ballard and Sean Reyes. And here are Batman's parting words. I always expected I would die from a bullet to the back of my head or jailed in some Latin American country. Both are likely still on the table. But the Lord has power over that. His will be done. That's the end. Thanks for watching.